Welcome, my noisy friends. What a beautiful day here in the middle of nowhere. Thanks for tuning in. I know you're going to enjoy this episode. And if you do, please hit the subscribe button. As always, I am always appreciative of your support. Today, I have a rock and roll legend that hails from Cleveland, Ohio. He is the son of the greatest drummer ever, Buddy Rich. Oh, wait, maybe not. Are you?
I'm his bastard son.
Okay.
No, I used to say that to people who asked me, and my name is my real name. So was Buddy's, but there's no relation or anything like that. And I did meet him. I will say that.
Oh, that's cool. So it's been a long time, and I'd like to welcome Tommy Rich. How are you doing, Tommy?
I'm doing great, making music, which is all I've wanted to do, and I'm going to keep swinging till I can't swing no more.
There you go.
Yeah.
So when I was chatting with some friends of mine, telling them that I was going to be doing this interview with you, and my buddy Lord Alfred Eggplant, aka Mike D'Alessandro, asked for you to tell us everything about working with Eric Carmen. And that conversation was before we got the news of the passing.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about Eric?
Yeah. It's funny because while you were setting up, I was actually texting the great drummer, Jim Bonfanti of the Raspberries, right. The original drummer, who I'm still friends with, because for a couple days, I've watched so many people express themselves so eloquently about Eric and the band and the legacy of music he left. Great music. And I haven't been able to do that. I don't post a lot of stuff. And so I was just trying to even, have some thoughts to tell Jim and his great wife, Barb, and the whole Berries family. They were the gateway for me into the Cleveland scene. A bunch of my music buddies in early high school, and I mean early, like 9th, 10th grade, we were following the Raspberries around everywhere. And it was because they happened to not show up at this one teen club gig that me and my best buddy, who we were huge Who fanatics, we weren't going to pay the $2 to go in and see the band that was subbing for the Raspberries. And they started playing Bob O'Reilly as we were walking out the door, and we just turned around and went back in. And that turned out to be the guys that I met just later that night and later on in the week, just a happenstance meeting in a music shop. I met a guy named Craig Balzer, who knew Eric. They had played together a little bit after the Raspberries broke up, but the Balzers were forming a band. But anyway, short story, I went to work as a roadie for them. I was only 15. I don't think I had my driver's license yet.
Yeah. But
driving the van. But so that was my entry into the biz, and it came via this power, they call it power pop, wasn't invented yet. This powerful, just heavy, but not heavy, because they had the heaviness of the Who and Free and everybody. But Eric's voice was like, Small Faces meet Paul McCartney, and his writing and the harmonies that they put together. It's like, who are these guys? And they're from Cleveland? This is impossible. Though it wasn't really, because the level of musicianship and bands in the Cleveland area was so high at that time. The James Gang, I was following them around when I was even younger. Right. And they had already made it national, but now here come the Raspberries. And, got to know Eric a little bit over the years. And then when he retired and then came out of retirement in the early 2000s, maybe 2004 or 5, this is before the Raspberries reunion, he put together a band to play a special event at the Rock Hall of Fame here in Cleveland. Right. And I ended up playing drums on that show. It was a one-off, but it was supposed to be more than that. But then got the Ringo All-Star gig, and that was the end of that band. So but we stayed in touch, and I was one of the three people in a recording studio the night the Raspberries reunited to see if they could play together before the 2007 tour. But from my short time hitting with him, I've only worked with maybe one or two other musicians of that amazing skill and ability. He was just a badass, as a sweet person, kind of socially a little bit awkward, which I think didn't work in his favor because he turned to some bad substances now and again to deal with that. But a great person, and what a musician. It was just such a buzz to play, make music with him. And it was kind of a thing, because here we are in this small theater in the Rock Hall, the one that's upstairs. I don't know if you've ever been there. Great acoustics, great sound. The place is packed. And in the front row, staring at me, is Jim Bonfanti, watching me attempt to play his parts. I don't know why Eric didn't pick Jim to play on this gig. I don't know the backstory to that. Never found out. But, it was kind of weird in that thing. And I remember writing him a note. I said, it should be you up here instead of me.
Right.
But I sure was honored to do that. And this came as a shock, but not shock. I have a couple friends that are still in touch with Eric. And, I didn't hear anything terrible about it or, about his health. I heard that it wasn't good at times, but, when you lose an influence like that, it's still hard for me to take in. Just 2 days later, I'm still kind of like, should I say something?
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Everywhere you get online, there's articles and stuff, and that's really impressive.
Most of them are very good too,
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So usually when I start an interview, I usually start with for me, I feel like I was born to rock. Like I have pictures. I have like 8mm black and white silent film of me carrying a drum set or drums around and stuff. And I just know in my heart that I was born to rock. And, but there's always a certain point where at one point in your life where that that's your destiny, that's what you do. That's what you do best. When was that time when you reached that point?
I'd already become aware of drums when, I'm old, so this is a really long time ago. Somewhere in the early 60s, there was a guy named Jerry U.S. Bonds. I didn't know this at the time, but he had a song out called Quarter to Three. And I was already listening to 45s that my mom would bring home, and, some were kind of poppy, some were kind of kidsy music, but I'm already maybe 7, 8 years old. And I hear this song Quarter to Three, and all you could hear on this little AM radio on my parents' dresser was the vocal with this really cool slapback delay, which was very rhythmic, and the drums and a sax. That's all I could hear. Yeah. And I was like, these drums are amazing. And then there was another guy named Sandy Nelson who had a song called Teen Beat. And again, and they put all this, cool echo on the drums. And, Sandy was quite a producer in his own right. And I was like, man, I don't know about this, but this is really cool. Yeah. But when I knew I was going to do that was the night the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan, February 9th, 1964. Yeah. We just had that anniversary again. And I'm sitting between my two parents and who the Beatles come on. We always watched Ed Sullivan. And here comes this band I didn't know anything about. And I right away lasered into Ringo. Yeah. And I just, in my heart, I knew instantly that that's what I'm going to do. I've already been hearing drums. Now I'm seeing this very cool guy in this very ridiculously cool band doing what I know that I'm called to do. Yeah. And the next day I had my Lincoln Log sticks and a pan that my mom used to, wash things out and, and I'm playing on it to the radio. And it was already there. My hands knew what to do. My heart knew what to do. Yeah. it's my religion now, but I just knew that there was no alternative. When you're called, and you know, any other music brain could follow, you know, this line of thought exactly. It's like, you're called. There is nothing else. There's no alternative. There's no way out. You're either in or you're not in. And, you know, maybe you can try it for a taste, and then maybe you have a backup plan to go into dentistry or find, you know, creativity in other ways. But there was no backup plan. There was nothing else. I
remember one time that you had said that once you're in it, then you can always step away from it for a little bit, but you always come back.
Yes. Yeah. And I never stepped away. Really, the longest I went without playing my actual drums, once I finally got a drum kit when I was 14. But the longest was when the pandemic happened. At the time, I'm, you know, music director of the School of Rock, which is 3 schools in the area in Cleveland, and it was a very, very busy job. I wasn't playing much anyway. Then the pandemic happens, and then we figured out within 4 days how to go completely like we're now doing remote lessons, remote rehearsals, remote everything. And I'm so busy. I didn't play drums for that whole 2020, you know, for that whole year, until all of a sudden I got a session kind of at the end of the pandemic, and I hadn't played, and I was embarrassed. And this is, you know, interesting. You're telling me this story about that girl who had, you know, had a head injury that, you know, was really position. Well, this was a guy out of New York named Mickey James, and he had toured with a lot of people, was a session guy, and he had great songs, great vocals. And I went in and cut these tracks for him. And then about a month later, he fell off a ladder and he died.
Oh, no.
And still the producer, a guy named Mark Owen that I've had a long relationship with, he went and we recorded more of the songs, of his great songs. I don't think it's seen the light of day yet, which is a shame, but that was the longest I went without playing. And I knew then that 2 things had to happen. I had to get back to playing drums because it is my life, and to just making music in general. And I had to retire from the School of Rock, from running that show. It'd been over 15 years. Had nothing to add to it. You know, there's times to leave the stage, right?
Well, I have some questions about the School of Rock, but it's a little bit farther down the thing. So, so I know that you're a huge Beatles fan, and you spoke of that. Tell us about this story.
Yeah. Well, you know, like I said, I lasered in on Ringo, and that's the All-Star Band on their first, right before their first gig. I'm thinking Atlantic City, and I took that picture in their dressing room. The only people in the dressing room were the band. Eric Carmen's manager at the time, David Spiro, a great friend of mine from Cleveland, who's managed many, many artists, Joe Walsh, Dickie Betts, and he was, you know, he was working with Eric. I think maybe that's how I got to play with Eric at the time. And so I'd already done the gig with Eric, or maybe a couple of gigs, and then he joins this band, and yeah, idiot me. No, I should have been in the picture, but I took the picture instead. And that's the band: Dave Edmunds, Jack Bruce, the late Jack Bruce, Simon Kirk, also playing drums. And I think that the keyboard / sax player / everything to Eric's right is Jake Rivera, if I'm you know, great musician, has played. But yeah, there I get to meet Ringo. So I'd already met so many people, the Who were even bigger in my life than the Beatles.
Which leads to the next one.
Yeah. Robert Plant was there. You see his name on the dressing room door.
Yeah, I do.
This is a Who show. And Robert Plant's walking around, and I said hello to him, but did I even care? No, I get to meet Pete Townsend.
Oh, no.
That's an original Quadrophenia Who shirt from 1974 that I'm wearing. And next to him is the great friend and drummer from the James Gang, Jimmy Fox.
Cool.
And that's the first of 3 or 4 times that I got to meet Pete. And this wasn't just like, hello, how are you? This was actually a hang and a conversation. Also met Zach Starkey, Ringo's kid, who was playing drums for
That's
the Who,
awesome.
and I've met them again several times over the years.
Did Pete hear you?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the last time that we spoke, again, we're at a Who show in Columbus. I'm there with David Spiro, and Joan Jett was opening, so it was nice to see Tommy Price again. They're great, her great drummer. But Pete was showing us his hearing aids, because David had hearing aids. I have hearing aids. So we were, we used to nerd out about what kind of girls or what kind of drugs and what kind of, whatever. And now we're
comparing hearing aids.
Talking about hearing aids. And all my drummer friends are deaf, like it's, yeah. Noisy.
So that leads to the next one.
Mm.
What exactly is going on here?
Oh, Billy Gibbons, from ZZ Top is saying something very funny. I got up, I was playing drums. This is in a rehearsal for the Les Paul tribute, Rock Hall. Before School of Rock, I was doing a lot of stuff. And I think I already was with the school at this time. But I played on that show. It was a tribute to Les Paul. Les Paul was there. He was very much alive, and he played. Oh my God, it was amazing. Yeah. But the people on that show, the regular drummer that they had was a part of a Memphis group of session musicians, including the guy seated, Dave Rowe, really fine. He's in Nashville mostly. Amazing player. And I was asked to do the harder rock stuff because the drummer, who had played with Elvis and other people, was not comfortable with some of the heavier stuff. So Raul reached out to me, and I played with Billy Gibbons and played with Richie Sambora, played with Slash, a number of other people that, just didn't fit the other drummers' wheelhouse, I guess. And so there we are at the rehearsal the day before. And he was really funny, and, I don't know what he was saying. I can't remember. Somebody sent that picture to me years later.
I never really appreciated ZZ Top until I moved to Texas.
Yeah.
And the one time they played 3 sold-out shows in the major arena in Houston, and I went to all 3 of them. And I was so amazed by how awesome that band was. And then over time, I've really become a huge Billy Gibbons fan. He even played a song on Alice Cooper's one of his, not his last one, but one of his recent ones. Mm-hmm. And that song's just badass. Like, he just has that sound. Like, it's just awesome.
Exactly. He has that sound and that feel, and he's very nonchalant about it. It's just, who he's absorbed, all his heroes, mostly the blues guys, the great blues guys. And then he listened to some of the British guys, but it was really the Southern blues cats that he just processed. Out came his voice and his sound, which is the mark of any great musician. You take in all of this stuff, and then you cook something that is totally yours, and there it comes.
I couldn't imagine being in the same room like that and just, not only just playing music or listening to music. Yeah. So let's go on to the next one. Tell me about this picture.
That was pretty funny. I'd always been a fan of Jeff Beck, and he comes to Cleveland with the 3-piece, and I ran into, I think I went down there by myself. Anyway, I ran into another guy that was very closely associated with the Raspberries, Al Caston, great guy, has done a lot of work. And when they got together, he was behind the scenes helping a lot when they reunited the Raspberries, I'm talking. But he's there, and we're just enjoying the show. We went upstairs. Al knew some people. There was a private party with a lot of FBI, Cleveland FBI office. And this is up in the private room off the foundation room upstairs at the House of Blues, which is where this show was. And I'm in this party, and I end up sitting right next to Jeff Beck. He had visited the FBI office. That everybody geeks out on something, right? And that was his geekness. He, besides cars, American muscle cars and hot rods, he geeks out about the FBI and tries to go to the FBI offices at the time. And I went up there to meet Dave Weckl, his drummer, because I had played with a guy from Santana that played with Dave, and I just wanted to say, hey, you know, Alex, whatever. Dave doesn't show up, but there I am sitting next to Jeff Beck. We're drinking champagne. He's got a muscle car hot rod magazine on his lap. I show him the picture of my Triumph Spitfire. I say, well, I'm into British little cars, and you're in America. How weird is that? So we start chatting. And then his, I think at 20 or 21-year-old brilliant bass player, Tal Wilkenfeld, is the bass player on, and that's who's in that picture. She was on that tour. And we were all leaving and chatting on Euclid Avenue in front of the House of Blues. They were about to get on the bus and go to their next stop. And again, I don't get to meet the drummer, but there I am. And so Al snapped that picture. And I put it, I was already at the school by that time, and I put it up in the school. And I said, yes, this is my new band.
That's really cool. Yeah. So we started earlier about your passion for the drums and stuff. What was the American Noise? Was that your first major project, or how? What happened
it was
the drums and stuff.
It was the first. It wasn't the first band I played in. I mean, there were several really good bar bands that I auditioned for and got into, and before that. But while that was going on, I was, had formed a really very tight, like brothers friendship with Craig Balzer, who was the driving force behind what became American Noise. He was the writer. He was the lead singer. And him and I, and his brother Bruce, a brilliant slide guitar player, by far the best musician in the band. We were putting this band together, and the band had several false starts, but we were demoing up the songs. And it just kind of, the early demos featured, that Craig Balzer's songwriting featured Dale Peters and Jimmy Fox from the James Gang. At another point, he had, one of the guys from the Raspberries playing on it, and another point, Jim Bonfanni was in the band. And then Eric's first drummer in his solo band, where all by myself and all that, he was in the band. I was roadieing for these guys, and then Eric just said, Craig just said, all right, it's time for you to, then I was playing bass with him, and then I became, through osmosis, the drummer, and we formed American Noise and did the demos.
Did it do well? Did it sell well?
No. One of those great stories of the music business, which is 99% of the bands that get signed, and you might make a phenomenal record, you might make a shitty record, whatever, but it doesn't get heard because something happened. And what happened? We had these two managers. One was a European guy, one was a big time LA music attorney, had done a lot of work for a lot of people. A fine gentleman named Al Schlesinger. And basically the week the album came out, this management team broke up. They got into a thing. They broke up. They both claimed they managed us. The record company did not know who was managing us. I got a call at like 2 a.m. from one of the record company people. This was Elektra Records, but it was Planet, a custom label. Richard Perry, a great producer, had this custom imprint, but it was Elektra. And this guy from Elektra calls me and says, who the hell is managing you guys? We've got all this tour money on hold. We've got this, we've got that. We don't know who your manager. They both claim they're your managers, and you have to sort this out right now. Well, of course, here we are in Cleveland. One guy's in Switzerland. One guy's in LA. Eventually, kind of fell into the LA guy's lap. But by the time he took the ball to run with it, this record was over. We had great support in Cleveland. John Gorman, the whole crew from WMMS at the time were amazing. And they fought just as hard as we fought to keep the record alive. But in the end, you know, we couldn't do it. And that ended, you know, that quest. I left the band after several more tries to get signed and joined Donnie Iris.
I was going to ask you, what was the time frame of before and after? Maybe when you joined and then after you left?
With Donnie or
American Noise?
Oh, American Noise. That band, the record came out in 1980. We were brewing that record for a couple of years before that, making the demos and everything and writing. And so I stuck in there till right at the end of 84. I just, you know, it was over. We couldn't get a record deal. We couldn't get it. You know, like you just were telling me earlier, we couldn't get anybody to listen, or if they listened, they passed on the band. And we didn't have any really good representation. And so,
so when did you join Donnie?
I got the call to audition for him in very early, like maybe January or February of 1985. And much to my amazement, I got the gig. There were a lot of people auditioning, including Eric Carmen's, you know, first drummer, Donnie Kruger. We auditioned one after the other, and then another guy came up from Erie who knew all the parts cold, all of Donnie's songs. I mean, I had known, you know, a couple of their songs, but I was not very prepared, and I wasn't even trying that hard, but I got a call. And so after the audition, which was hilarious in its own right, and Donnie and I looked at each other when this kid from Pennsylvania, from Erie, came up and said, "Oh, he's got the part. He knows it." So we left out and got very, very drunk. And, you know, that night it was pretty much an all-nighter of carousing. We had a good time. And the next morning at 9 a.m, Donnie's calling me. I couldn't even speak with him. I was so, you know, I just gone to sleep, maybe passed out, whatever. And I said, "You got to call me back in a while, man," you know. And then his road manager for, you know, worked for the team who runs and owns the Kent stage by now. That's his day job. Anyway, he calls me and said, "What the hell's wrong with you? Donnie just offered you the gig and you blew him off. You said you got it." I said, "Man, I'm sorry, my brain is just all fog." And but yes, let me make a couple calls, because first I had to call Craig, you know, and say, "Hey, I'm leaving again." And we rehearsed a few times, not a lot, and went out and toured opening for the Kinks. So, and
he just turned 82 years old, and he still sounds amazing.
And I played with him at the celebration for his 79th birthday. Occasionally I'm subbing still for Kevin, who's their original drummer, who's phenomenal, and you know, has been playing with Donnie since he went through a couple drummers after I left it, maybe, I don't know, late 90s. Anyway, because I joined Donnie in 85, left in 90 to join Noisy Mama. And then when that whole thing crashed and burned, I got back into Donnie's band in like 93 or something, and toured it all the way to the end of the 90s, and occasionally subbed in. And he is amazing. His first gig back, because he fought some cancer over the last year after he turned 80. His first gig back is actually Saturday with the big, and that reminds me, I just want to send him a little shout out and wish him all the best, because I love that guy. What a great cat.
I love, and he's such a great. I mean, I love every one of his songs. That's one of the questions I was going to ask you is what was some of your favorite songs to play with him?
And I came to love a lot of the songs. I think my favorite is a song called "Sweet Mary Lee," because it's funky, and I didn't, Kevin Valentine created that drum part, and I just love it, and I love the song, and it's kind of jazzy, but it's also it's probably the most difficult song because it's so out of my, way of playing. And I was trying to play stuff kind of close so the band would be comfortable to way the tracks sound. And I never got tired of playing Aaliyah because it's just, the most ridiculous thing ever. And as far as their songs go, and there were a couple other ones that weren't known, that they did in records while I was maybe in or out of the band. A song called Pole Town. Phenomenal song. And so real, about a neighborhood outside of, somewhere between Youngstown and Pittsburgh. And those songs were great. And the band, Marty Lee's ridiculous guitar player. And, mostly that vibe though that Donnie has is just undeniable. And he really could bring it when I played that gig as he turned 79. He made me sick. He was just he's jumping around like a 40-year-old. He's singing like he's hitting everything, every note. So I hope he's still got that. I don't doubt that he does.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
My favorite song by him is 10th Street. I love that song.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories about you and Donnie is the one time I went to the one in Sharon, Pennsylvania, the wing place.
Yeah.
And you were allowed to stand behind the stage and everything. And I was standing behind the stage, and you guys just finished the song, and you turned around, you noticed that I was there, and you started breaking into Hounds of Desire, Propane. And Donnie turned around and says, "What the hell are you playing?" And you were like, "I missed that song." And that made me laugh so hard.
Yeah. That was where that place in Sharon, wasn't that the Quaker Steak and Lube? They had that venue, right?
Yeah, I think it was it.
Yeah, because we played it a few times, and with that thing behind the stage. I remember one time, I don't think you were there, but all these fans behind me that were sitting behind me started coming up and helping themselves to the drumsticks in my stick bag.
Yeah.
It's
so if I was interviewing Donnie right now, how would he describe you?
Oh, that's a really good question. He'd probably just say something very short. It's like, "Man, I love that guy." I don't know anything. I don't know, I think there's some guys at the band that would say negative things. But,
Well, as you know, I know you best as being the drummer for the band Noisy Mama, which is primarily the reason why we're here. And I was a really big White Noise fan, and it was the most exciting news when they announced that they were getting signed. But it was also heartbreaking that Carl and Alan wasn't going to be a part of it. So when Everybody Has One CD came out, at the time I was living in Houston, Texas, and you guys came through, and we all had lunch and dinner or whatever before the show. And you and Chris were just so quiet and reserved and stuff. And I didn't know you. And then when you guys came out and played, like immediately I was like, that fucking drummer is awesome. I was like, screw you, Paul and Jimmy. I went backstage afterwards and I was like, dude, where do you come from? Because and like I just like you have like a unique drum style that I really admire. And let's talk about Noisy Mama. Like how I know you got the gig. They were opening up for you with Donnie. So tell us about like how you guys met and everything, and then tell us the whole story of Noisy Mama.
I don't think we met that night really, though maybe a little bit, only to exchange some uncomplimentary words because, oh, by the way, I had seen White Noise before that thing. I had gone down to Youngstown with a good friend of mine, Jimmy Clark, another phenomenal drummer who's now Lars's drum tech, And anyway, so I went, to see Jimmy and I rode down to Youngstown one and just like, who's this band? Because I was in a band called American Noise, and now there's this band called White Noise, and like, let's see if they suck because we hear that they're great. Well, they turned out they were really, really good.
Yes, they were.
And didn't meet them then, and then yes, they were doing a showcase for some record people, and they were opening for Donnie, and Paul tells the story better than me because he was on the furious side of it. I had some repairs to do on my kit, and after we got done with sound check, I was just taking my time, taking my bass drum apart or something, and they wanted the stage. I didn't know them, you know, and I just know that somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, are you going to get your shit off the stage? Because, you know, we have a record showcase going." And I probably told them to fuck off. I don't know, you know, but so I don't know even why I would have got the audition, or you know, I don't know why they called me. I don't even know who called me. The next thing I know, where did I audition? Maybe in New York City. Well, they had a drummer do most of the album or all of the album. I know I went and played some stuff. I was in the studio right at the end of the recording of Everybody Has One. But anyway, so yeah, I auditioned. You know, I should have thought about this more before this interview because it's very hazy to me. Those days were really hazy. For, I don't know whether. Anyway, I auditioned. I joined the band. This is the late 1990, November of 90, I think. And I don't know what it is they heard that they wanted to meet this asshole who kind of dissed them on their big record showcase thing. All I know is that I got a call and it's like, they want you to play. And I had just been to New York auditioning for a band called Company of Wolves that
I know
loved, and I knew the Conti brothers from my time living in New York. I lived in New York previous to that, by the way.
Yeah.
And the brothers wanted me in the band, but their management and label didn't want a guy from Cleveland. They didn't want to pay the money to have me, you know, flying up and back, whatever.
Right.
I don't know. But so then they took another guy, and they told me later that it was a mistake. And I said, yeah, I really wanted this gig.
Yeah.
There was another album, One and Done, you know.
Yeah.
But I loved their music, and just weeks after that, somebody from Noisy Mama reached out, and anyway, I got that audition. Back to New York City, right?
Yeah.
Back to New York City, right to the studio, 39th Street recording or something like that. Paul Logos was engineering, who always stayed in touch with them and helped us do demos years down the road. But I know all I remember is fist fighting with those guys, like literally. You know, like the day I got there, I was really tired. I think maybe I drove in, and anyway, I was trying to catch a nap on the couch before I was going to go do some percussion tracks or something, and they just like dove on me and started fighting. Well, I'm no stranger to hitting things, so okay. That was the first time, and it was just energy. It was just like rock and roll energy.
Yeah.
And I know I was in the studio, and then I'm sleeping on the floor of their place, and they put the speakers on either side of my head and turned up Pantera all the way to wake me up in the morning. This is when they were living in the city at 55th and 56th Street somewhere.
Yeah.
And they're just seeing if I could hang. It's like, you guys don't fucking know, but I've been doing this a really long time.
Yeah.
On the road. It's like nothing moves me,
Yeah.
I punch back just as hard. And so
Yeah.
there was more carrying on. And I remember Jimmy Gamita, we're sitting around a couch, like in that period right there. And he goes, "You're an old dude, aren't you?" I think I was all of 34, maybe 33, but I was older than all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
what was some of your favorite memories of being in the band?
well, the very next thing that happened is, the management moved us all out to Stroudsburg.
Right.
I'm sure you know about that, the band
Yeah.
Stroudsburg. so we could all gel as a band. And they had a new bass player at the time too, or kind of new. Well, Chris Marullo, you know, not the Youngstown guy, the Boston guy, or he joined the band for the record. And I guess they didn't feel that right about the drummer that cut the tracks. I can't remember, his name escapes me.
James Kotak.
No, he's not the guy on the record.
Oh, he's not?
No. He did some of the earlier demos, but there was another guy. I knew him. And it might come to me. Yeah. So anyway, but I just remember we're rehearsing in Stroudsburg, getting ready for the tour that's coming and starting to gig around the Eastern Seaboard. And I remember the first time we took a break was Thanksgiving. And my wonderful friend Jimmy Clark takes us, he was doing a van service between his gigs. You know, he playing for Joan Jett and for Scandal and for all these other people. Anyway, he's driving us back in the van, and we're sitting in lawn chairs, or at least Jimmy and Paul, and I think I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and Clark is driving. This is one of my favorite memories ever, and one of Clark's too. And again, you know, we're bored, and so one of those guys behind me sneaks up and just like cold cocks me in the side of the face. Man. So I just dive back on those lawn chairs, and we're rumbling back there because it's a box van. It's, you know, right. There's nothing there except those lawn chairs, and we're just, and he's Clark is just, what the hell is wrong with you people? And just the shit is going on, and you know, it's just mayhem back there. And you know, 10 minutes later, we're all, you know, clothes all disheveled, and you know, various marks, and it's like, well, it's business as usual. This is how it's going to be. And this happened a lot on that first tour. Yeah. You know, or even before, you know, we did kind of like little mini tours before we did the big tour, the one, you know, where you met us. Yeah. But, you know, we went up and down the Eastern Seaboard a few times and met a lot of very interesting people. But I think the best times were writing already what was the beginning of should have been the next Noisy Mama album. Yeah. We came up with some really cool songs in those very first days at the Stroudsburg mansion. You know, mansion, I use that word very loosely. But, you know, it became a thing, and we used to go into that little town. We were bored as hell. I had a new car, so we constantly snuck into the city. We weren't supposed to. It was an hour's drive to New York, so we went into the city a lot. So all those times of us getting into stuff, building rockets. Chris Marullo was absolutely off his rocker crazy, the brilliant bass player, but you know, a nutcase, you know.
I so miss him. I really do. I miss him. I've been scanning stuff in, and I found some old letters that he wrote me, and I really miss the guy.
Yeah. And he was the kid, and I was the old man, which was really a funny dynamic, you know. Yeah.
And one of my very favorite part, I thought you guys live was unbeatable. Like you guys live, there's no question, hands down. You know, if people would show up, they would love you. But I also loved some of the songs, and I especially loved the era of the band when, like, Sign of the Times, Funky Monkey's Uncle, Strength and Faith, Worlds Collide. Yep. Those are some badass songs. And one of the biggest things that really pisses me off about Noisy Mama and White Noise and all that was they had all those great songs. They had the following, but they never released it. Nobody knows about them. You know, it's all great music. Like I was telling you earlier, it's great music that's going to go unheard. And I think that is a damn shame. And
there's so much of that, you know, and not just from us, but so many musicians, so many brilliant people have created some of their best stuff. The world never hears it. And I agree with you completely. Some of that's, you know, Sign of the Time was, I think, the first thing we did and recorded, as you know, with me and the band now. And it's still, you know, a really cool song. But you know what, everybody's had, you know, has one. The reason I thought that the band was cool already. I mean, the label framed them. You know, this is a hair metal band. This is a pop rock band. And yes, some of the songs had to be that. And I think they thought they were that when I joined, you know, Paul and Jimmy and Dave, you know, that attitude. Chris was just a punk rocker with long hair, and none of the above. And but that album had depth that other bands of that genre didn't have. Then, you know, think about the lyrics on Million Miles or Long Way Home or Daddy Long Legs. Yeah. Not only were they musically really, really cool, but they were really cool lyrically. And that's where I knew, you know, Paul was a badass and Jimmy is a badass with his writing and his tone. Really a badass. We didn't always get along, but man, I always got along with him as a musician. The guy's, you know, was and still is a badass. And you know, but those songs, they won't get heard. We did then, as you know, become Hounds of Desire. Trying to completely get away from that thing. You know, by then Nirvana and Alice and Soundgarden had made their thing, and it's like, we want to write the stuff that works for us, which some of that Hounds of Desire album was a continuation of those songs that you mentioned. And I don't know why some of those ones that you heard that you mentioned didn't end up on that record, unless they have the timeline all screwed up. But no, I don't really. The Hounds of Desire stuff got written after that. And you know, very quick recording session, very good engineers out on Long Island, New York. And and some of the songs on there, like Brianna or whatever, and I'm thinking, you know, that's going back to the sound that Noisy Mama had. But, you know, and you know, or Atomic Emotion or stuff. But then stuff like Propane,
I love that song,
which we're still playing.
Good.
My insistence, and
you better.
And 19th Nervous Breakdown. I mean, get the hell out of here, man. That shit is stanky, man. That stuff rocks.
So the upcoming show, Noisy Mama in concert on April 6th at West Side Bowl in Youngstown. So what can we expect?
I think what I love about
is there going to be any fist fights?
No.
Will the drummer beat up the singer?
The last time the singer and the drummer got into it was in the middle of that tour when we started fighting, just the two of us. Oh my God. You know, there's so much that went on that tour once we got into it. I mean, you know, for the people that have wives, including myself, there's a lot that I can't say. But the fighting, you know, Paul and I are roughhousing somewhere, and it was on the last leg of the tour, but we're up in a hotel room and just, you know, get into it, and somehow he squeezes my ribs with his legs and crack. And I heard it crack, and it's like, you ever try playing drums with a cracked rib? Which I had to finish the tour. A lot of scotch went into that, a lot of medication. Oh, I'll tell you my of that tour, my absolute favorite moment. We hated our tour manager, hated the dude. I don't remember his name, and I don't wish to. You know, the rest of the road crew was fine, but this guy was just wrong in every possible way you could be wrong. And he smelled, and we're in a 15-passenger van, and, you know, and it's bad enough we're doing the circuit of the whole country. By this time, the van is pretty well destroyed. It was a brand new van when we picked it up in Strasbourg. And we're in Atlanta, and we're pulling out the next morning and, you know, heading up the East Coast. And that morning, the tour manager gets in the van to drive, and he smells particularly offensive. And we're all just dude, you know, and his breakfast was like drinking milk and donuts, and I think that was all he ate. And it was, I don't know, rotting teeth or whatever he ate, but it was just ugly. And he stops to get gas, and we're just looking at each other, and it was like almost telepathic communication. And Chris Marullo, God bless him, jumps in the driver's seat and says, we are agreed, and was like, move, let's go. And so we just pulled away and just left our tour manager at that gas station in Atlanta. And
that's funny.
And it was, we were just so happy, and we're driving, and, you know, there were no cell phones yet. This is 1990. And I love the fact that nobody could get a hold of us, including our managers.
Yeah.
And we stopped. The next gig was pretty far away, and we played it. I don't think he was there at that gig, but the gig after that, maybe up towards Baltimore, by then we talking to our management, and they were like, what the fuck did you guys do? You know, there was a lot of what the fuck did you guys do on that tour, but this one was, you know, and there is our tour manager to finish out the last few days. And he's just acting like nonchalant, like nothing happened. They say, hey, good one, guys. You know, good one. Like, yeah, not good enough because you're still here. We should have buried you. And I liked our managers. They were not the most, credible managers. They were a little inept at it. Their hearts were in the right place, and they definitely put up money when they could. But that was the worst thing they did. There's like they flew him from Atlanta to wherever, to Baltimore, to meet us.
Right.
Pissed. We were all so pissed. And then we lost our record deal.
So again, what can we expect at the West Side Bowl?
I kind of got away from that. So what you're gonna get is a good dose of it's really going to be the two bands. It's going to be White Noise and Noisy Mama. Right. And I gotta say, White Noise was a really slamming band, and they did that album. What is it, Out from the Ashes, or?
Yeah, Out from the Ashes.
Yeah, anyway, I had to learn those songs, the White Noise songs, and there's a good number of them that we're playing, probably about 5 songs from that record.
Right.
And I always knew this, and I was there at his last gig. Alan was a beast. I don't know why he wasn't in the band, to go forward, because he really is a fine drummer, was a fine drummer. And
he was a good dude too.
Yeah.
He was a really good dude.
Yeah. I know. I knew him.
He's sorely missed as well.
Yep. Yeah. And, remember that last show of his? Were you there?
Yes, I was.
When they did the White Noise reunion. And, I was there as a fan. Paul asked me to learn a few of the songs in case Alan couldn't come through. And, Alan wasn't even speaking by then, because of the throat cancer. But I told him that I'm not here to play, man. I'm here to be a fan and just love you. But what a player. So you're going to hear a lot of the White Noise record. And you'll hear a lot of Everybody Has One. You'll definitely hear Propane. I wish we were doing more Hounds of Desire. Is there another one? Maybe not. Another one got knocked around. Paul's still writing, still doing stuff. I wish he was doing some stuff from Resurrection Road, which I got to be involved with, but I don't think we're doing anything from that. Maybe in the future we should talk him into doing one of those. Yeah, and talk
I just
about.
repressed them. I just repressed them, and I'll have them for sale at the show. Yeah. Yeah,
that's another record that should be heard. It's timeless. It's not of a time. It's not like Everybody Has One. You could argue was of a time. A lot of it. But so it's really going to be a White Noise, Noisy Mama show, and that's what you can expect. Because Carl, Carl Bant is from White Noise, and he's on it. And then we got 2 great guitar players. A guy from Cleveland,
Yeah.
you know, who was on the last one that we did last year. And, you know, Dougie Manroth, and he's a kid, but he's a badass, or badassness in waiting. And then Ron Marks joined it this time, who plays with Paul and Ledsmith, and Ron's a very good fit. We played with him on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be great. Yeah. You know, it's like you'll get the same mayhem.
I want you to be there early because I talked Paul into having the Borstal Boys open up.
Yes,
they're good. They're good friends of mine, and I've been helping them out for the last several years. And they're really good. Their music is sort of semi-refreshing because right now the metal music is taking over the world and has been lately. And these guys, they just rock. They're just like a, you know, Faces, Springsteen type band.
I love it.
They're really good. They're really good.
Yeah, and you know, we met a couple of them. When Paul and I went to Pittsburgh a couple months ago for a very hilarious interview.
Yeah.
And
what should be coming out soon.
I can't wait to see it because it was pretty funny. And we had a really good time with who interviewed us. Rocky's in the band, right?
Yeah, he's the bass player.
Right. Yeah. So trust me, I'll be there and I'll be hearing everything.
Rocky's a good dude, and he's doing something really, really cool in Pittsburgh. Like he has that music from the 412 and video and radio, and like I really respect him. He's working really hard. And so let's move on. So the most Cleveland musicians, especially the ones that went on and became successful, they left Cleveland. However, you chose to stay in Cleveland. Why did you stay in Ohio?
Well, I didn't. I didn't stay. I actually spent a lot of time in. Speaking of some of the criminals I've mentioned. Anyway, I was in 3 years in New York City, and but Donnie couldn't find a replacement. I was still in Donnie Iris, and I had intended to leave, but they kept flying me back for gigs. Right. And after 3 years, I spent a little time in, a few months in England, but I was doing fine in the city, and I just kind of blinked. I don't know why I came back. Went to England, broke up with this crazy English / Medina bred girlfriend.
Oh no!
And came back to Cleveland, but right away I was going back there, like the audition for Company of Wolves,
right?
Which the day I put my signature to ink on the Noisy Mama contract, Company of Wolves calls back and said, "We made a mistake. We don't want the drummer. We want you." And Paul Scourin got a kick out of that because he was the one that brought the phone to me and handed it to me, at the Stroudsburg band headquarters, going, "The Wolves are at the door." And it's like, what? Anyway, but so I was in New York, and I spent a lot of time going back and forth to LA, then to Nashville recording. But it's so easy to live in Cleveland, it's easy. I mean, the weather notwithstanding, which never bothered me because I like winter. I like skiing, whatever. But, my friends are here. My family was here. I came back at a good time to kind of, watch over and help my parents out as they were getting older and circling the drain. And that was an opportunity that I'm very grateful for, that I was the one here to take care of them in their later days. But, and then things happen. What happens? School of Rock falls in my lap.
Right.
And became a second career, but it's still a music-based career, but probably the luckiest thing, because you make your own luck. And that was the luckiest thing that ever fell into my lap. I was just about to leave and maybe move to Nashville, where I'd been doing some session work. And here comes the school. And I'm so unfit to be a music director of anything. I never took a lesson, and I got hired by Shelley and Mike Norhead. Phenomenal people, not musicians. They bought the franchise, and they needed a musician to start the program. And how lucky I was. And so naturally,
So what exactly did you do for the School of Rock?
I was hired to be the music director and to hire the staff and get the program rolling.
What exactly did you do as a music director?
Everything. taught lessons. And, it's a performance-based music school, and it is a rock and roll music school. So job was to keep it rock and roll, to come up with shows that we do every 3 months or every 4 months, is it? Whatever. 3 times a year, show season, to pick the shows that would best represent our students at the time and give the students the best experience playing in a live rock and roll band. And so this was the staff I hired, and you're only as good as the staff you hired. And I quickly decided, well, I'm the great unschooled, the great unwashed. I'm going to hire the badass musicians that'll make me look cool. But anyway, it worked out really well.
I recently, well, I wouldn't say recently, but I did an interview with the singer for Dangerous Toys, Jason McMaster, and he still works at the School of Rock in Texas. And he had said he met you.
I'm sure.
He said that you were down there once, and you were telling him that you were in a band called Noisy Mama, and he's like, "Hey, wait a minute, do you know Paul?" And but he went in pretty good detail of what he did. He was at the School of Rock, and I was just curious what you did. So you were basically oversaw all the people.
Everything. I mean, literally everything musical went through me. Everything office-wise went through Shelley Norhead. So it was a great arrangement. She handled the business, and I handled the music. So, I oversaw the coaching up all the hires, the music instructors, became show directors. I was.
Did you have any one-on-one with the students?
How many?
I said, did you have any one-on-ones with the students?
Oh yeah, I taught drum lessons at the beginning, and actually,
did you ever have anybody that was like really outstanding, like that you were like going, this dude's going to go far?
Yes, and we had more than one anybody. We had a lot of anybody's, but yeah, I taught everything. I directed all the different shows, from the little kids to the adults, because there's an adult program. I just got my nose into everything, so that when we brought on staff, I knew what I was talking about as far as coaching them up and getting them, into teaching, being School of Rock teachers versus a teacher who teaches off a book in a, little one, music store or private. It's a much different program, much better. So I just hate to talk about like everything I did, but I did everything and ran the program, and it grew to 3 schools, and it's now a behemoth. Left it in very good hands.
Did you offer any really good advice? I mean, what kind of advice did you give to the students?
My biggest advice, I think, was that kind of like what I just touched on. Number one, wherever you go in life, you do make your own luck by being prepared and working your ass off. You don't get there by just being lucky, but you work your ass off, and then when the door slips open, you best kick that door open, but it'll go for nothing unless you are prepared. So whatever your calling is. And the other thing I told them is, look, 99% of you won't be in this business in 20 years in the music business. But you're here to learn life skills, not just, just playing. We want you to play. We want you to love the vibe here. We want you to, learn that there are friends outside of your stupid phone, and real friends and a real vibe. And there's great music out there that you're not aware of. And so that kind of mentoring went on. And nowadays, I'm just, I'm so grateful to see I can't go anywhere in Cleveland without running into ex-students, ex-parents, working students to their bands, and so many of them, of the really exceptional ones. Why did I go to Texas? Because I took the really exceptional kids out on tour every summer, and one year we did start our tour in Texas. Maybe that's where I met. And we played Houston, Austin, Dallas, and then moved on all the way up to Chicago and back down. But we did a tour like that every summer. And my thing was, we're going to be very tough on you, and because this is life. There's always pressure. There's always somebody looking over your shoulder. Learn how to deal with it. Don't go off crying. Don't come at me with your issues. The issue is be excellent, be great at whatever you do, and then you will rise. And if you don't, you're just going to have a Monday life of suckage, and that's where you're going to end up. So yeah. In your entire career, was there anybody that ever gave you advice? Yeah. Craig Balzer, Craig Balzer was, from American Noise, was my brother, but my mentor. He was the only one that I really, really had in the music thing. Yeah, somebody should have advised me strongly to take lessons. I'm still trying to play catch up on that, man. Because I hired all these great drum teachers, and I was always trying to pick up, little things from them. And I'm a bad student, and I just am. And after a few minutes of them trying to show me something, I'm just like, shit, And it's frustrating to me. Here I am, I'm denigrating the same thing that I did, because I taught. But when I taught drums and even other instruments, I would pass those students along fairly quickly to, I thought, the more qualified staff that can take them to a higher level. But I could also bust any student on anything musical because I have so much experience, and I can, and I would try to make them aware of feel and also make them aware that don't do this business unless you are called to it, like I was. If you're called, there's nothing you can do, and you're going to be in it. Sorry. But so if you are going to be in it, you better be excellent, and I'm going to be doubly tough on you because the bar is going to be that much higher. So
I have a tear sheet from a magazine from April of 1993. Yeah, it's from the Corporate Cleveland magazine, and I'm going to pull it up right here. Yeah, and then this one, it says it has yearly incomes from different celebrities, politicians, public figures. The Chief Justice of Ohio Supreme Court made $107,000 that year. Sandy Alomar, the great Indians catcher, made $500,000. Bernie Kosar, the great quarterback from the Browns, $2 million. President and CEO for the United Way, $185,000. Who's this Tommy Rich making $3,500 to $4,000 a year?
What?
That's what it says.
No, 3,500.
Yeah, $3,500 to $4,000
a year.
Can you see it?
No, I can't. Wait, can I? Oh, wait. Okay. What?
It's all the way to the right. Look all the way to the right.
Okay. Oh, drummer. Well,
what the hell happened there?
I don't know. I mean, I remember a couple really lean years in the 90s after Noisy Mama, and maybe before I rejoined Donnie Iris, or I don't know, somewhere in the 90s. Well, I got into recording. I got into producing. Maybe it was after that it was after, like the late 90s. And there were a couple of years that maybe I earned like 13 grand, 14 grand, I can't believe it, but 35, I was just busting balls, I guess. It was never that bad, but hey, you know what? I mean, I got into a local band, called Samrata, nicest people, and they did a lot of big corporate things, and it was great practice for me. It kept me playing. During the early years of the school. So between that and the school, I was earning actually good money. And then when the school just took over, I had to quit that band, and I wasn't hardly playing at all. But then my deal with the school, which was a percentage of the profits, was kicking in. And I ain't complaining, man. I made a really, really fine living. And To walk away from that is almost crazy, right? But
Yeah.
again, you got to know when to leave the building, and I left that building in very, very good shape, and
good,
because I wanted to play, and part of this, is being able to play with Paul again and have such a good time. And what was that other picture that you put up there for a second? Where'd you get that? With Eric Singer from Kiss?
It was on your Facebook page.
It was? See, I don't post much. So anyway, so that's Eric Singer. Right before he went on, we were just having a meet. Jimmy Clark next to him, who works for Metallica now, but who's a great drummer and my best friend. And Tommy Amato, another really fine Cleveland drummer. And we were all just, we're buds of Eric in this room before the show. And then we went up and watched Kiss and watched Eric kill it. Another great Cleveland drummer. There's so many great drummers from Cleveland that, have made it onto the national thing. Michael Cardelloni, another good friend that we saw over the holidays. Innards drummer for 30 years. And
he's a great drummer.
Yeah.
So I have a couple more questions. I actually have a lot more, but we're getting pretty long into this thing here.
Yeah.
So one day I was over at Scowron's house and I saw a bunch of boxes of demo tapes, and I asked him if I could take them home and digitize them. He only gave me enough time to just copy them. So I'd copy one side and all in one file. And recently I've decided to go through them and separate the tracks and stuff. And in one of the tapes, Jimmy was, never mind. One of the tapes, Jimmy was sitting there wailing, he was rocking. He had this awesome riff, and I can hear your voice in the background going, "Hey Jimmy, slow that down a little bit." And he slowed it down a little bit, and then I hear you go, "Just a little bit more." And then he did a little bit more, and then all of a sudden you kicked in with your drums, and the rest of the band dropped in. And what a difference from the time when he started wailing, because I was all right with that, till what a difference it made in that song, that when you told him that you had the insight to tell him, "Hey, slow that down a little bit." And then when the band kicked in, I got goosebumps. It was awesome. I was like, oh my God, that sounded awesome. How do you talk about, I always knew that you were pretty much I think Jimmy wrote the songs and stuff, but you were the glue of that band. And tell us about, tell us about your participation with, making those songs great like that, producing them.
Yeah, well, I think it was very collaborative between Paul, especially between Paul and Jimmy and me. And, Jimmy and Paul already had a working dynamic when I came into the band. But, for whatever reason, I'm just a feel guy. And so I guess they kind of heard that when I did come up with musical ideas or suggestions, they weren't just shit. They worked and moved the song along. But we all came up with ideas that got rejected, but nobody was shy to throw ideas around. Dave occasionally came up with some good parts, and Marolo, he would come up, he got a lot of coaching from Jimmy, but he became a really fine bass player as far as conjuring his parts. So it was super, super collaborative. When we did our demos, I knew how to mix by that time and do a lot of audio, but Jimmy kind of took over on that. That was his thing. And I didn't, we all sat there in the mixing of it and deciding what parts were good. And, but songwriting was collaborative. And as we started to create our own sound, which is kind of the post, everybody has one era, which became Hounds of Desire, I got more involved in also sharing writing, helping with lyrics and chord changes and stuff like that. But it's just a part of being a musician that I naturally gravitated to since the beginning. I was always multi-instrumental. I can play bass, I can hack on guitar, keyboards, whatever. You don't want to hear me sing. unless I'm singing with Paul doing an old Stone song. But it's really just part of that's the glue of being a musician. I don't want to be a drummer. I play drums for a living, and I can make my case behind a drum set, convince them with feel. It's just feel, but that feel should be able to translate to what you're hearing. And I produced a lot of records in the late '90s too, and including a couple pop punk bands. That was like you mentioned that. I was like, yeah, man, I love that genre.
All right, so if you wanted to put together a super group of your favorite band members and or the feel, like what kind of music would you rock? Would it be rocking? And who would be in the band?
I probably wouldn't be in the band, first of all.
No, it's your super group.
Oh, it's my super group. Can I just be the producer?
No.
I mean, I'm thinking this is a lot of old school guys, but Angus on guitar, right?
Okay.
John Entwistle on bass.
Okay.
Steve Marriott on vocals.
Right.
And if I had to be the drummer, yeah, okay. But I would rather it be like either Ian Pace or Keith Moon, depending on what direction it was. And two of my biggest influences, Moon, Pace, Mitch Mitchell. Anyway, and on keyboard, for sure from Deep Purple, John Lord.
Of course.
That would be my super group.
So let's talk about Scotch. You mentioned it earlier in the thing, and I know you're a big fan of the Top Shelf Scotch brand. So usually when you and I get together, there's some drinking going on. So are you still drinking Scotch?
Yes, Scotch, and what I discovered in the meantime during a recording of an album, I was recording this Irish band, and Irish whiskey became a big part of So Scotch and Irish whiskey, I would say, are my two favorites, and so yes, very much so. I'm not like in that bourbon craze. I don't know, people love bourbon. I'm like, I mean, there are some really good ones that I've had. But if it's me and my choice, it's going to be the Irish or the Scotch. Yep.
Yeah. Are you buying on April 6th?
On April 6th, I'm probably not even going to drink on April 6th. And I'll tell you, well, I might have a couple beers. I used to be a phenomenal drunk player. Like I could go. You could sit me on a drum chair and I could drive the band. Or at least I thought I was. I could never get baked and play, never ever. But drinking was always went well with it, And I can't anymore. Two things changed. I got older and I got older, and I got older. Number one, so physically, the alcohol just takes away those fine motor skills to play, which I need more of, and also I'm more focused on playing really, really excellent, trying to be as good as I possibly can. And I don't want to, so, like my routine with Donnie, I wouldn't, juice up before the show like I did in the 80s, in the 90s. We'd pour each other one shot. Him and I would have it together, and then we'd go hit the stage. And that's as far as I'll go, because I want to be excellent. I want to play really, really well. How can I talk that shit to like my students that I had and whatever? How can I talk that shit if I'm not going to live it? I got to live it,
Yeah.
So, and then when I get home, then I'll definitely,
I'm so excited. Like, I had been to every single Noisy Mama show since 1992, and last year I missed that one, and it crushed me. It crushed me that I was not there. So I am coming to Ohio, and I am going to be rocking like I've never rocked before. So I'll be really excited and ready for it.
I hope the band lives up to your expectations. I hope it lives up to mine. Paul is singing better than ever. That I can tell you that. I can't speak to my playing, but I know that Paul is playing, singing his ass off.
Yeah.
And still the front man he always was. You know, two fine guitar players. Carl is doing his cool thing on bass, and just his presence adds the whole white noise element to it. So I hope, you'll see a great show. I
know it'll be a great show.
My part. Yeah, I'm going to do my part, and hopefully it infects everybody else on the stage, and we all just get out of our heads and deep into that river of music, and do it
Tommy,
justice.
it's been an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with me today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, good to meet you again, Paul. It's I don't even remember the Houston meeting. That's funny. I thought I met you in the Youngstown area. So
no, the first time I met you was in Houston, but I've been a fan and everything, but I just didn't know who you were at the time.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the years of support, because I know you founded our fan club and that, and you're one of those people that is driven to be a rocker, even though you're not a working musician. I know many people like that, and the world of music and stuff doesn't exist without people like you to drive that.
I appreciate that.